Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a team centered around some very interesting Ariados IVs that helped me climb from the low 2800s, where I had fallen to in the couple days since the Moltres team, all the way back to 2983 ELO at the time of recording. Now, I do have a rank 12 Ariados that I previously used, but I stopped using it and I built an Ariados that is a way worse rank, but performs way better in this meta. High attack Ariados is what you want to run if you're running Ariados. One of the big reasons why is the Feraligatr matchup. Feraligatr and Ariados have identical pacing. They get to Hydro Cannon, you get to Trailblaze, and that CMP tie is actually IV dependent. High rank Ariados loses CMP to most Feraligatrs. The high attack Ariados wins that CMP, so it turns it from a losing matchup where you get crushed into a dominant one. The other benefits to high attack Ariados include dominating the mirror and winning CMP versus Arctobax. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and let's take a look at a very strange team with a lot of triple weaknesses that ended up working out better than it ever should have. And in the first match, I'm leading Ariados into Dunsparce, a Pokemon that this team is technically triple weak to. The idea behind the team is a pretty simple one. Ariados, very good at forcing alignment due to its combination of buffing moves with Trailblaze and debuffing opponents with Lunge, and the Drifblim Toxapex core is a very strong one. Toxapex just a very good bulky Pokemon that can absorb hits, and Drifblim, one thing that I really like about it is it's very strong into both sides of the Toxapex Diggersby core, which is very common. Here, my opponent is actually going to give up switch advantage, so I'm able to neutralize the Dunsparce, win switch, and now I get to put Toxapex on the Talonflame. Talonflame is going to farm up, throwing on good timing, and even if it's the Brave Bird, I'm not going to shield. It is going to be the Fly from the Talonflame, and if they're staying in, I will more than happily get the shield back that I used on the Ariados by launching a Brine. I'm going to farm up a ton of energy, I make it to another Brine, but I lose charge attack priority. My opponent is going to go for the Brave Bird, it picks up the knockout, in comes the Drifblim, and in the back, my opponent is weak to the Drifblim as they have Chestnut as their final Pokemon. One nice thing about the team, there's just nowhere for grasses to go. If your opponent has a grass type, they're going to be in a truly terrible spot, as grass types really can't do much of anything here. I do have to make sure at all times that I am preserving the shield, because Talonflame should have a move. My opponent makes a last second move, but this is only 11 Vine Whips, which means this can only be a superpower. Then they can just bring in the Talonflame. Talonflame, they're able to get a move off, but I have more than 1 HP. A shielded move does 1 HP of damage, but Drifblim has a ton of HP, so I'm able to survive it and take the win. This is the matchup I was talking about, Ariados versus Feraligatr, and this attack tie is IV dependent. A high rank Ariados will almost always lose this, a high attack Ariados will almost always win it. And if you can win this cap tie, you're in a dominant position. My opponent can catch out of this. They're going to catch onto their own Ariados, which is a pretty nice play, but I can just rebank this energy, and then I can bring in Drifblim. Drifblim is great at shutting down opposing Ariados. Honestly, Drifblim definitely felt like an MVP on this team. Again, if I had the Shadow, I would run it. Unfortunately, my Shadow, I forgot to TM away Frustration, so that's just entirely my fault. My opponent is going to debuff me again and again and again. Here, I thought an Icy Wind would still knock out at -2, but as you're going to see, unfortunately, my opponent barely hangs on. In comes Feraligatr, and they're going to launch the Hydro Cannon to pick up the knockout. I'm going to save my Ariados. I think it's going to be valuable. Instead, I'm just going to bring in the Toxapex. Toxapex is going to do what it does best, which is wall Feraligatr's energy and get a nice and healthy farm down. So I'm just going to go for the full farm down with the Toxapex, exit with energy, and I'm hoping that that energy will be valuable in the end game. I do get the farm down. What is the final Pokemon? And this is another Pokemon that the team is triple weak to, Alolan Sandslash. Alolan Sandslash, this is going to be an uncomfortable Pokemon to deal with, as Ariados, Drifblim, and my Toxapex do all lose that matchup. Here, my opponent is now going to lose charge attack priority, so they're going to end up shielding. They get to their move at the same time I get to my move. Their winning play is to catch, so I'm not going to throw. I predict the catch, they go for it, they are unsuccessful, and despite being triple weak to Sandslash, I'm going to beat a Sandslash, as Lunge is going to pick up the knockout and take the win. We move to the next match, and this is another matchup where having the high attack Ariados is so good in the mirror. You dominate the mirror because whoever wins the mirror is whoever wins CMP, because it's a game of lunges. So if you're able to debuff your opponent before they're able to debuff you, you're going to begin to get a health advantage and continually expand on that health advantage throughout the course of the match. Here my opponent is going to switch into the Feraligatr, and now I can bank a ton of energy on my Ariados and just send in the Toxapex. My opponent is a very rare opponent who is actually on crunch on their Feraligatr, so they are intentionally running that specifically for this Toxapex matchup. Even so, I can survive 2 crunches, my opponent still not getting the debuff. I didn't want to risk a brine not KOing here, because I don't run a lot of Toxapex, so I will fire off the Sludge Wave and be able to pick up the knockout. Opponent is going to bring in the Ariados. Ariados is going to fire off its energy. Ariados' energy, of course, can do a lot of things, but it can't do anything into the Drifblim. So I can bring in the Drifblim. I'm going to get debuffed here with the Lunge, and we'll have to see what that final Pokemon is in the back. It's going to be Pangoro, and this could get tricky. I shouldn't have thrown that Astonish. Throwing that Astonish is a game-losing mistake by me. I should have waited, seen the typing, and switched, because now I'm actually going to get to this 3rd lunge when my opponent gets the Night Slash, but they win charge attack priority. So throwing that Astonish was just incredibly sloppy gameplay from me, and now I know I can't shield this. If I shield it, I'm just going to get KO'd and I don't get my move. So I just have to trust that Drifblim can do okay. My opponent is heavily debuffed on the Pangoro, so I know that I can live a Night Slash. Even so, that does a lot. I'm farming quite a bit of energy here, watching for a catch. I wait the turn, they don't get the catch, and now I get the double up here. My opponent should be on 6, which means they are not at the back-to-back. So I can safely throw 1 and the move, as now they're at 7, and 7 does not equal 8. And Pangoro is straight forward to Night Slash. So with careful counting and a very patient wait of a turn, we're able to take the win. We move to the next match, picking up a positive lead, leading Ariados into Toxapex. Ariados wins the 1-shield versus Toxapex straight Trailblaze. And the way to do it is tanking a brine, shielding a brine, throwing your first 2 Trailblazes as soon as you get them, and then farming up to the back-to-back on Trailblazes 3 and 4. Here, I'm going to fire off my first 2 Trailblazes instantly, right as I'm supposed to. My opponent is actually going to switch out into Kanto Marowak, and I fire off a move not on the greatest timing, but I'm boosted, so I know this will command a shield. I now bring in the Drifblim. Realistically, I probably should have gone for a lunge, and there, as you see, I frame drop and I don't get my Astonish Sneak. That is such a bad lag there. That is so unfortunate. As now, I mean, things could get a little bit awkward. I go for the Icy Wind. Thank goodness they end up letting it through, but losing that Astonish was absolutely brutal. In the back is going to be Galarian Moltres. Moltres, I'm just throwing the Icy Wind instantly. I don't care about good timing. I need to apply a debuff, and then I need to switch out. In comes the Toxapex. I don't care if they Brave Bird me. They're debuffed. Them Brave Birding is fine. I have zero reason ever to respect this move. They go for the Brave Bird, I can tank it, they bring in their own Toxapex, I have the health advantage, which means I'm going to be able to win this game. Sludge Wave doesn't KO, but this is going to set up a sick Poison Jab farm down. And if my Sludge Wave didn't KO them, then theirs is not going to KO mine. I have a very high ranked Toxapex. So I'm going to get the full farm down and leave with the Sludge Wave loaded. In comes the Galarian Moltres. Moltres hit with the Sludge Wave. Sludge Wave doesn't quite get the knockout, but one Astonish from Drifblim will secure the win. We move to the next match here. Ariados into Talonflame. This is a lead you can't stay in. You can stay in and fight versus most things. You have to switch out versus the Talonflame lead into the Drifblim. Drifblim is going to be shielding up as the opponent will go for the fly, and now I can throw 3 Astonishes and the Icy Wind, so it's good timing. This puts the opponent in a predicament. To outpace here, they have to throw an alignment. If they go for good timing, which they do, I can actually force a second shield. So it forces the opponent into a bit of a dilemma. Do they value shields over throwing on good timing? Now that I've got the shield advantage, I'm just going to let the Drifblim go. Drifblim has done its job. I bring in the Toxapex. Opponent is going to pivot into Superior. They end up saving the Talonflame. So this is going to be very interesting. Superior, this feels like they're trying to bait back out the Ariados, and I'm just not going to fall for it. I'm expecting their 3rd is weak to Ariados, and that's why they're doing this. But the thing I have to keep in mind is the Talonflame is still around and it has energy. So I pick up the knockout and then I stop tapping. I'm going to learn from the mistakes of almost losing that match versus the Pangoro. I intentionally don't throw the Poison Jab so I can switch instantly, fire off the Trailblaze. Trailblaze is going to connect. and Gastrodon is going to fire off its energy. This Earth Power will do a lot, but this is a safe shield, because when my opponent combo plays with the Talonflame, this just gives farm to the Toxapex. So now I can bring in the Toxapex, get a perfect farm down. They have no energy on that Gastrodon, so I can fire off the Brine. Brine will secure the knockout, and we're able to take the win with a lot cleaner gameplay than versus that Pangoro. Speaking of Pangoro, my next opponent is going to have it on the lead. I'm going to farm up, go for the lunge right away. My opponent is able to make a switch out and a catch of the lunge onto Quagsire. I don't really have an amazing response to a Quagsire safe switch, so I'm just going to stay in, try and CMP tie my lunge to when they get to their Stone Edge. Since somehow they were able to sneak when they caught, they are going to end up committing the shield, and they're firing off their energy. I'm going to call the bait, and it is just the Aqua Tail. Even so, the next Aqua Tail would come very close to knocking me out, and I need switch. So I will actually use the shield, and now I am going to full send the Trailblaze. Lunge, I don't think would quite KO, but a Trailblaze absolutely will. My opponent is going to have their own Drifblim in the back, and this is going to be a very difficult game. As Drifblim from an opponent is really, really tough for this team to deal with. My opponent is going to switch out into the Pangoro, and I'm able to send in the Toxapex, but that opposing Drifblim's energy is going to be very tough to get rid of. This Pangoro is going to keep spamming out Night Slash after Night Slash, chipping away at the Toxapex's health and fishing for boosts. That pacing is just absolutely unreal. Oh my goodness. Ariados has great pacing. Pangoro's is somehow even a little bit better. Unfortunately, I am stuttering quite a bit. I actually do end up missing a turn right there. The Night Slash is going to connect, and my opponent is going to go for a snipe with the Drifblim. I fire off the Brine. That's going to connect. I bring in my own Drifblim, and I just have to go for a shield and a farm down, because then I will be able to debuff. My opponent ends up full sending a Shadow Ball there. Honestly, I was expecting them to Icy Wind, but this is what this is going to come down to. Can I live a debuff Night Slash? I don't think I can. Pangoro, its attack stat is massive. However, they are debuffed. Moment of truth, I barely live. That game, I definitely could have played it a lot cleaner. The game was a little stuttery as well, but my goodness, I was so happy to barely survive and take that win. We move to the next match, seeing basically our worst nightmare, Ariados into the Shadow Lull and Sandslash, and we are triple weak to this. This is going to be a really tough battle to play our way out of. A lot of Sandslash users will end up no shielding, so I'm able to shield once and win the 1-0s, and then hopefully my backline can do quite well. However, if they end up matching shields, then things can get quite tricky. So here my opponent actually ends up no shielding, which is quite nice for me. They're actually going to switch out, so they end up saving a bunch of energy, and now I have a choice to make. Do I go into the hard counter of the Drifblim, or do I bring in my own Toxapex? I make the read. I think Drifblim is good in back, so I'm going to throw away the Toxapex here. My Toxapex is going to be a complete wall to their energy, of course, and they're debuffed as well. So they're just in for a very rough go of it. I'm going to farm to 100 and fire off the Sludge Wave. In hindsight, maybe I should have just kept farming, because if I kept farming, then my opponent eventually would have had to throw, or if they switched, I still could have tanked a Drill Run and connected with some Brines. But instead, I get neither. My opponent is going to get to fire off a Drill Run into an Ice Punch and pick up the knockout. I bring in Drifblim, I get the nice Astonish down. What are they going to have in the back? And it's Talonflame, and I made the wrong read. If I had saved the Toxapex and brought Drifblim into their Toxapex, I would just be in a winning position. But unfortunately, I misread the team, and that's going to cost me the game. And that is a little bit of the unfortunate side of trying to do team predictions, is sometimes you're able to get it right, and it's amazing. But in this instance, I'm just not. I go for the Icy Wind. Opponent is going to make a very nice combo play, and that just guarantees the win for them, because they have the move banked on the Talonflame. I'm going to fire off a move, go for the Trailblaze with the Ariados, but I can't farm down here, and that would be my only chance. I can't farm down. They make the Brine. They stored too much energy. Yeah, a game that if I made a better read and played cleaner, maybe there was a chance, but unfortunately we do lose the match. Hopping into the final match, leading Ariados into Lickitung, and this is a lot like the Dunsparce lead, where this is very uncomfortable. My opponent, since they're running Lickitung, most Lickitungs that you're going to see at high ELO are going to be running Body Slam Earthquake. This provides them really good coverage into stuff like Toxapex. However, you may notice a Pokemon on my team that is a complete wall to the Body Slam Earthquake moveset, and that's going to be the Drifblim. My opponent is going to play out the Zero Shield here. I actually lagged by a turn there, which is, so my opponent ends up sneaking when they shouldn't have, but they're debuffed, so this could actually force them to give up Switch, because they're debuffed, and I'm going to wall their energy. So I bring in the Drifblim, and they throw on what can only be a Body Slam. So this is great for me. They go for the Body Slam, they're now going to bring in their own Drifblim, and I am so happy that they did, because I'm so weak with this team to Drifblim. I am ABA weak. My opponent is going to fire off their own Icy Wind, but the nice thing for me is that gives me a free Astonish. And with the Astonish, I'm able to make my own Icy Wind, and now if they shield, then I just have to bring in the Toxapex. They will shield, I bring in the Toxapex, they're double debuffed, so a Shadow Ball is not threatening to Toxapex whatsoever, so I'm very happy just to let this through. Shadow Ball, not going to do much of anything, and it's a Shadow Poliwrath in the back. Talk about a blast from the past, but Poliwrath post-counter nerf, even though it does have favorable matchups into stuff like the Aqua Tail Crunch Drapion and the Dunsparce, to me, it just really feels like cope. I really don't see, like, genuine meta play for Poliwrath. I mean, I imagine that good players will be able to make it work just because they are good at playing, but I just really don't see the value in it, to be honest. I think they're just better fighting options. And here, Toxapex is going to commit the shield and take the win versus Lickitung. All in all, I did quite a few days of battles with this team, and I was able to consistently climb up to maybe if I played it tomorrow, I could have hit Legend with the team, but I really wanted to get a video out on the team because I had a lot of fun with it and unfortunately fell just short of Legend this time. But it is a bit of a weird team, as I mentioned. It's triple weak to the ELO and Sandslash. It's technically triple weak to the Dunsparce. But I do feel like it shows that teams that have flaws that are ABA weak to something, if you do have a game plan for what to do when you encounter them, can actually have some success. Again, not having that game plan, it's going to be a rough go of it. But I was able to beat multiple Alolan Sandslash with the team. Honestly, versus Dunsparce, going up against it, I definitely had over a 50% win rate against Dunsparce teams. And since I had so much footage, I ended up moving it all over to my computer, and I believe it was like 2.5 hours of gameplay. So I ended up cutting it down to just 8 or so of some of my, like a couple of my favorite battles, some battles that I felt showcased the team well, and other battles just to showcase where I think the team did well, but maybe I could have played a little bit better. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.